Hello and welcome to the quarterfinals of the cage match tournament with Nocturne cards. This match will be with Leprechaun, which is in the bottom right of the kingdom there, and we'll go through some of the ideas associated with Leprechaun. First of all, let's look at the board here. Now, a couple of things crossed my mind looking at the board initially. One, there's no plus buy, but there is quite a bit of gaining on it with Workshop and Hermit. Leprechaun also gains gold as well as wishes if you play it as the seventh card or have it as the seventh card in play. And there is sufficient draw on the board. There's pathfinding, there's villages, envoy, encampments as well. So a lot of build paths jumped out to me here. Obviously, you want to trash a little bit. Trashing is worth it here just for a bit of reliability. You might consider something like Envoy and Money, but I think the Brigand puts a hole in that, as well as the extra gaining from the Leprechaun, the wishes that is. So you want to trash and build up, but how is it that you want to build up then? You could go for villages and envoys. Workshop is there to make that quite easy. There's also encampment, which is nice to get, very, very nice. But it has the fragility issues. You have to pair it with either gold or plunder to keep it in your deck. So my plan going into this first two turns here was to go for Hermit and Monastery. There is tax, but that doesn't bother either player on this board as we both go for those two things. My plan was, alright, look, Hermit gains. If I pair it with the Monastery, fine. If I don't, well, I still get to trash a couple things. I'll get a Madman. Maybe on the Madman turn I can get a gold and then go after the encampments. And then use that as my draw, stick pathfinding on encampments, and then just go after the provinces. I didn't really see much else to do on this board given the lack of plus buy. So 5 for my opponent. He goes for a farming village, which I understand. There's a lot of gaining on the board. You want to play hermits, maybe workshops, maybe. So fine, yeah, the village is not a problem. On 5 there, I understand that. And here 2 is tax because I don't want to buy an encampment because I want to trigger the hermit to get a madman. And tax, you could buy events and it still triggers the hermit, turning it into a madman. Tax on noble brigand because I didn't expect to be buying a noble brigand for this entire game, and I couldn't really find a better target for the tax there. All the other piles I could potentially see me picking up a card from. And here my opponent, he goes for a tax on the farming villages, which is reasonable given that I don't have one, but at the same time it doesn't really matter too much because I can use my hermit to gain a workshop to gain the farming village if I really want to avoid the 2 debt. It's not that detrimental. So for him, it's going to be a workshop for me. I do have the Madman in the deck, so with a couple actions, hopefully I can play a couple terminals. And we'll see how things go from there. My opponent has quite a bad shuffle. His Hermit and his Monastery did not show up until turn 5, whereas those two showed up on turn 3 for me. So quite a big advantage for me right now, I feel. He gains a workshop as well and picks up an encampment here. So picking up the encampment without the gold is fine. Still, you get to draw a couple cards, get to see your hermit a little bit more quickly. That's reasonable. You could also play for trying to hoard the encampments, just keep them in your deck and eventually pick up a gold or a plunder somehow, and then you would have all the encampments. That is something I've seen people do. I'm not sure um, what it, when that is the right thing to do, if that is the right thing to do here. I don't think so here, but I never usually think so. And I could be wrong. Anyways, 5 for me here, and I consider the farming village here, even with the 2 deaths on it, but felt like a cartographer would serve me very, very well, especially going into this next shuffle here. I would be able to trash quite a few cards here. I was able to trash an estate plus a couple coppers of the monastery there. So things are looking very, very nice. And immediately, I'm glad I picked up that cartographer over the farming village because here it can get me to the end of the shuffle very nicely and find me my hermit. So I get to play both of those things. Another workshop for my opponent. I was a little bit skeptical of the second workshop, but he turns out to make it work here. Maybe I should have had a second workshop a lot earlier in this game. So I'm just going to use the encampments here, the hermit, sorry, to gain encampments for the most part when I'm not converting the hermits to madmen. So here I do plan to convert this Hermit to a Madman, just because I don't really have money to buy anything on this turn, honestly. And there comes the workshop finally for a farming village, so I don't really have to worry about terminal collision anymore, especially given the size of my deck. So I'm very far ahead, I feel, at this point. I have a Madman in the deck, and my deck is much thinner, much thinner. I have a couple gainers. My opponent also has a couple gainers, but I feel like I can use my gainers a bit more often than my opponent's gainers. So workshop here for my opponent, it could be any number of things really. Workshop is pretty good here. Gains everything except cartographer on the board, and you wouldn't say no to a farming village ever, ever. So he does go for a leprechaun here, and I thought this was a little bit early. I'm not sure how many cards he can have in play right now to get the wishes from the leprechaun, but we'll see soon enough. And here, somewhat important decision here. I decided to leave the Madman on top of the deck and just draw the Hermit so I can play both Hermit and Workshop. And I will be able to trash my last two coppers here. So what I have to do here is set up myself so that I have some economy next turn, which means, yeah, buying the Leprechaun. I do pick up an encampment here. Hopefully, I can play the Leprechaun, gain a gold, and then still preserve the encampment in my deck was my idea. Playing the Leprechaun, I know that I won't be able to get a wish this turn, and I'll have to take a Hex. Hopefully the Hex isn't too bad, but we'll see, right? Workshop for my opponent gets an encampment, and Hermit trashes an estate, gains another encampment. So, as things turned out, my opponent has 4 of the encampments. That did not go according to my plan, of course. That's a terrible Hex to take, misery, but better now than near the end of the game, I suppose. So my plan was to get, at least 3 or 2 of the encampments, but I only ended up with 1 here, which, okay, so that didn't go according to plan. But I have to make do, right? It's not like there's no draw on the board. There's pathfinding, like I mentioned, there's envoy as well. So what I'm gonna do here is actually gain a second leprechaun. Now you can't ever have, leprechaun triggering twice. Well, not true, but here you can't have leprechaun triggering twice. It has to be the 7th card in play. So you could play it as 6 and 7 or 7 and 8, but never 7 and 7, right? And I do that just to get a wish here, because I knew that I had enough control over my deck to make sure I play that leprechaun as the 7th card. I use my wish for a gold just to buy pathfinding and put it on farming village. So I have a little bit of drawn, all right, in the farming village. So I feel fairly confident. What I didn't do here was buy a card, which means my Hermit got converted into a Madman, and I'm a little bit sad about that. I would really like to have the Hermit in the deck, although there's not a lot of things to gain with it. I primarily wanted to trash. Like I said, I don't need another copy of Leprechaun, so I would have liked to keep the Hermit to trash the Leprechaun. Well, one of the 2 Leprechauns here. And I would also like to trash my Monastery because in my mind, I've removed all the starting cards. There's nothing else that I would need to um, trash with the Monastery. So that was my thought at this point, right? So I do use the Workshop, gain a Hermit, draw back the Hermit. I have immense control over my deck at this point. Don't even need to play this Madman. Things are looking fine and dandy, right? I have $9, enough to buy province, pay off debt, and this is, what I envisioned near the start of the game. Look, there's no plus buy. Once you have your money, my deck is fairly reliable. I can workshop a farming village every turn, supplement the draw. I have the Madman here in case anything goes wrong. Just fire that guy off and draw a bunch of cards, rescuing my turn, hopefully, ideally. But here is where I start to go wrong a little bit, and my opponent makes better plays than me in the middle game here. So he triggered his Madman here. Remember, he was a little bit behind on trashing, but all that is gonna fix right now with the amount of gains that he's able to pick up on this turn, and the Monastery just cleans up everything like an efficient janitor, really. Remember, he does have the encampment advantage. Uses his Leprechaun here. That Hex does not hurt him at all. I don't know why I couldn't get the Hex. I had to get the -2 Hex. and another Leprechaun. This time this Leprechaun gets him a wish, right? So I assume he just wants the money in the same way that I wanted the money by playing Leprechaun twice to take a hex. And he is actually going to come up here with enough money to province, I believe. And he still has draw in his hand, right? He has 4 encampments. I know he has 1 encampment in hand. The question is whether or not he would want to put pathfinding on something. Whether or not he would want to put pathfinding on something. And the natural pile for him seems like the plunder or encampment pile. It makes it even more reliable because you draw 3 cards, you have a better chance to see a gold or plunder to save your encampments, to preserve your encampments. So off goes the wish for my opponent, and here's what he wishes for: a plunder. And that is what I should have wished for on my last turn instead of the gold, the plunder. Now, with the -2 points from the misery and no plus buy, the only gain, well, not the only gain, but Leprechaun and the wish gain, um, we have nearly identical gains in the game is what I'm saying. And that 2 points could be very, very influential, especially if he extends that lead by playing plunders often. So I missed that. I missed that. So he's trying to come back into the game. He already has a 2 point advantage. That extra play of the plunder so far gave him a 3 point advantage, which is already a duchy. Already a duchy, right? And duchies are pretty hard to come by in this game. You could wish for a duchy, fine. But that's probably the only other way aside from buying your duchy. Okay, so that being said, I am able to get this Leprechaun going again here, so I can get another wish. I do eventually trash my Monastery here and play the Leprechaun again to gain another gold and another wish this time. Another wish this time. I check my deck. I think I have a farming village and 2 golds in there. It's not the greatest hand, so I decided to play the Madman to try to clear that off the top of the deck. And you see by this point, I have 5 golds, right? And now I'm going to exchange his wishes for plunders because I realize, look, I need to, farming villages at the top there. I need to, close the gap with the misery plus my opponent's plunders here in a fairly symmetrical game. But, and I think my opponent is going to show you the play here. My deck is becoming quite large. I see that now. There's 20 cards in the deck. I have some farming villages for draw. But at this point, I was feeling safe with my Madman, right? But I had to use the Madman last turn. I didn't have to, but I chose to. Anyway. So draw now is an issue for me. Where before it might not have been with the Madman around, now it definitely is an issue. I'm still able to go through all of the deck, on most of the deck here, but I am slowly going to lose control here as the Leprechaun puts more and more gold into my deck. Obviously gained the farming village there, although my opponent, he gained an Envoy on his last turn, and there's definitely something to be said for me picking up Envoy here. Envoy does draw more cards than the farming villages, and I have ample actions to play an Envoy. Ample actions. There's no reason for me to hold back on not using my workshop for an Envoy there. But I didn't. I was, kinda, I already reserved that in my mind. Workshop is for farming village and nothing else. Maybe I state near the end of the game, but not for Envoy. So here now is the play I think my opponent makes, which really starts to, make me worried a bit here. So yeah, the Envoys come out. Obviously, you deny the Envoy there just to deny as much draw as possible. Just to deny as much draw as possible. He played his Leprechaun for a wish here again. He wished for a plunder. And he's going to buy another province here, I believe, picking up another Envoy with the workshop. So, but here's the play, right? He plays only as much money as he needs. And out comes the Monastery to trash what? To trash the excess gold from his deck. He doesn't need it. There's no plus buy. You don't need that much money in your deck. It only serves to stall you out. And I'm slowly realizing that here, look, I can't quite get to the end of my deck. I can't quite control when I play Leprechaun. That makes me lose out on a gain where my opponent might be able to capitalize on that. Play a wish, gain a wish when I I'm not able to. For instance, here I'm well well and truly out of range of gaining a wish off the Leprechaun. So I'm losing control, and my opponent, he seems to have very good control over his deck. To be honest, I have to discard the Leprechaun with the Cartographer because I don't want to play it. I don't want to hex myself. Could you imagine me get poverty here? Like, I would cry. I would cry, or a locust to trash one of my provinces or leprechauns or something. I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, still no envoy for me. Still no envoy. So I should be picking up envoys here. What I do decide here is to go for the duchy. I don't think I have time to pick up a monastery at this point either. We are well into the end game here. I have to be very, very tentative of my opponent. I did manage to get 3 plunders, so at least he can't drag the game out long enough and stretch that points lead via plunder. But like I said, he has control over his Leprechaun. There I was able to discard it with the Envoy. That's purely by chance. That won't always happen. So for instance, he could play his plunders. If he was able to gain a wish, that could turn into a duchy, then he can buy province, and then if I don't have that much control, he might be able to win this game here. Might be able to win this game here, and he has a better deck at this point, just because he has better control. He could play that Leprechaun exactly at the right moment to get the wish. And the wish is very important here, very, very important. Again, with the lack of plus buy. So 10 for my opponent. He can't really go after the province here. That just leaves a very, very easy win for me. So he goes for a duchy himself, and we're tied up on points right now. Right now, but I don't feel very good in this position at all, especially seeing this hand. See what I mean? The goals are starting to clog up the deck. The nice thing with the farming village is that, okay, it'll guarantee always draw you non-green cards. It's gonna, well, it'll skip green cards after the pathfinding coin token thing takes effect. So that's at least one redeeming factor. It could be worse. It could have been like an ordinary village, and I'd probably be dead already. Anyways, I don't draw a lot of cards there. I don't even see I see my Leprechaun, but I don't see it in time for a wish. And I just have to get a duchy, play my plunders, and hope, right? I'm still enough ahead to where my opponent can't just take the province and a duchy off a wish or something, play his plunders, and feel very confident that I cannot overtake him on points. I don't think I've picked up on Envoy yet, or maybe I have, I'm not sure. No, I have picked up on Envoy. I've learned from my opponent by an Envoy. And at this point, 2 piles are starting to look very thin. There's 4 envoys left. There's 5 hermits left. And if you've played with hermit long enough, you know that if you have overdraw, you could chain hermits to get the hermit pile empty very easily. So had I been trashing my golds, that could have been an option open to me as well, right? I had a lot of overdraw early in the game. Now I don't. But had I kept that option open, I could have maybe piled out the game at this point on the hermits. Who knows? Who knows? And that's why I wanted the hermit. I guess workshop also does the same thing, but hermit is cool. It has a madman on it. Anyways, my opponent, I think he does get a wish off here with his leprechaun. Yep, he was able to control it well enough. And he does have the wish, and he can draw it up if he wants. He uses his wish here for a duchy, and he is going to purchase another duchy here. I think that's his best play. He can't really do much more than that. So now I'm in a very difficult position here, right? Like if I buy duchy, there's 3 left, right? So if I buy 1, he can make this exact same play again, probably. Buy duchy, gain duchy with leprechaun, play his plunders, and win, right? Like the most I could do is province duchy, but then he can do similar and win, maybe? I'm not sure, but it's very close. He also has workshop to gain estates very near the end if he needs to. So here's where I decided to go for a play, right? I mentioned the hermit pile out earlier just now, and I know I have 2 workshops. I picked up one a bit later into the game, and a hermit. So that's 3 gains, that's 3 hermits out of the pile. So what I need to do is use these 2 this hermit. I know I already played a hermit early on in the shuffle to gain 2 hermits, and then pray that the cartographer plus the farming villages find the other hermit, the gained hermits, so that I can pile the hermits and maybe buy a province. Definitely buy a province. Look at how much money I have, right? Money was never my problem in this game. So what I do, Harbinger, didn't foresee this use of Harbinger, but it turns out to be quite useful here. I'm going to put the workshop that I know I played earlier on in the shuffle on top of my deck so I can draw it up with maybe Cartographer, maybe Farming Village. I should play Cartographer first, I think, just so that I can draw into things with my Farming Village. So think for a bit, and I decided, look, man, I have to go for this play. Otherwise, my opponent just gonna squeeze me out of this game, right? He just has more control, more gaining power than me. I have to try to end the game right now. I get rid of the Leprechaun here just to increase my odds of finding one of these gainers. I don't want any of you. I want my gainers. Get out. Um, Farming Village draws me into an Envoy. I don't find any of my gainers here, and here is when my opponent makes the mistake. He gives me the Hermit, and he's not supposed to give me that Hermit there. If he discards Hermit, leaves me with the Farming Village, I think more than likely he would win the game here because I left the pile so low. But because he left me with the Hermit, I'm guaranteed to find the other one with my remaining draw. Pile out the game, buy a province for the win. So excellent middle play game by my opponent, middle game play by my opponent, but this one goes to